Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy you could be here to spend some time with me today. If you're new around here, I hope you will consider joining our crafty little family by hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification so you'll be alerted every time we add new content. For today's project, we have a revisit and remake. So I went back in the channel and I found a base that inspired me to pull a collection from my stash. I made a few minor changes to customize it for the project I wanted to make today, but I think this is a great versatile base and you can switch out the collection or the theme for anything that you would like to create. So I have a trifold flip book with full-size flip pages as well as some tip-ins with additional images, and then there's also a belly band here so that you can include some items without having to adhere it to the book. So if that sounds like fun to you, then stick with me and we will make this together. So for today's project, I'm going to use this Couture collection from Graphic 45. Now I did receive this as part of my design team compensation back when I was on their team for 2 years. It is still available if you don't have it in your stash. They have re-released this as a deluxe collector's edition. So if you really like it and you want to get it, you can find a link at the description below. If you do not wish to use this collection, this particular project works great for any 8x8 paper pad or even 12x12 if you're going through your stash. But this is a very frugal use of this paper pad, and it's a very good scale for this project as well because those patterns are just a little bit smaller, and so they read a little better in a smaller project. Now, it is tempting to create an 8x4 project so that you can maximize the full length or height of this paper, but I'm going to share with you my reasoning for making my project a 4x7. So typically you would be getting your colorful cardstock in a 12x12 or an 8.5x11 sheet. I happen to pick this because I could get it a little bit thicker, and so my 8.5x11 sheet will divide pretty well into 3 usable portions. So if you're using this as matting in your background, you want to be able to get as many portions out of it as you can so that you're using your paper frugally. Now, if this were an 8-inch, you would not be able to get 3 full portions. So I want to make that design choice now before I start cutting into my supplies so that I can get a good frugal use out of my stash. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, this is going to be a revisit and remake project. And I just find that if you have a variety of bases that you're comfortable making, then you can get a lot of versatility out of them simply by changing out the collection that you use. You could be using up your stash, using scraps, or changing this out for a holiday. And so this makes it extremely practical because you've already got a lot of the thinking part done if you can go back and take the measurements and the process that you already know how to do and then just simply customize it for the project that you want to make. So we're going to start with 2 pieces of 110-pound cardstock. That is important. You really want the outside to be very sturdy, and you're going to be adding quite a lot of paper layers to it as well. So it's really going to bulk up and get heavy. That's just how we like our mini albums to be kind of chunky. And like I mentioned, we are going to stick to a 7-inch high profile. And for our 2 pieces, I have my first one cut to be 7 high by 8 3/4 wide. It's scored at 4 inches and also 4 3/4. My second piece is 7 high. This time it's 8.5. It's scored at 4 and 4.5. So this is going to give me a wider spine on one side so that we can fold it all up, and it will help to capture all of those layers. So this is a good place to bring in 2 glues just so that you will be sure it's very secure. So I've already added my double-sided adhesive tape there, and I'm going to reinforce that with my Tombow, just a small line around the outside. And as always, the hardest part is keeping your hands out of that glue. So I have assembled this with the wider part on the left and the narrower part on the right, so that when we fold it up, it's going to accommodate that bulk. The next thing you want to add is a couple of flip pages. This is another place where you can consider adding a variety of different finishing techniques. So for the original, I will link that in the description so that you can check it out if you're interested. I had only 2 full-size flip pages, but today I want to add an additional one just so that we can increase the amount of space there is to finish this, and also to help me get through more of that stash paper. I have quite a lot of 8x8 paper pads, so I can definitely utilize more if I add additional pages to this. So this piece that I'm adding is 7 inches high, as our previous pieces are, but now it is 8 inches wide, and I scored it at 4. So this is going to be a full-size page flip, and I did switch to 65-pound weight for this so that we can get those nice crisp folds. I am going to add 3, like I mentioned. So in the previous video, I had a flip here and then also a flip here. I want to add 1 to here as well, and I want them to open outward so that I can see all of those pages at the same time. Make sure to use those 2 glues, and it's just really easy to line these up because they're the same size pages. So along the side and the bottom to get that lined up. So I do want to include that 3rd full-size flip page, and I'm going to add it here to the very right-hand side. And like on the previous page, I do want it to open outward. So I'm keeping in mind where those score lines are going. You don't have to follow this rule. And if you want to add a pocket or an additional option, you can check out that first video because I did add pockets on that one as well. And so that would be just a little different way to finish that. But here is your base, and it doesn't look like much now, but wait until you add all of those beautiful paper layers and cardstock, and you can tell already that we're going to have a nice thick book. So here is the base. It is 7 high by 4 wide, and we're all set to finish that with our collection paper. I'm including some tip-ins for this folio, and typically I would use images from a collection that would be a pretty standard size. That would be a 3x4, a 4x4, or a 4x6. Now, when I moved into that 8x8 paper pad, it did change the size of those image cut aparts. I decided, however, that I did want to still have a 3x4 size for my tip-in, and I'm going to utilize papers from the collection rather than adding cardstock and then trying to cut matting to go around that unusual size. So this is still going to be 4 high, but now it is not 3 wide. I am okay leaving a little bit of the border showing. I think that's just going to be an additional design feature. So I decided to cut my paper for my tip-in to be 4x4, and then I scored it at 3 inches so that I would have my 3x4 size showing, and then this flap would be incorporated underneath of the layers of pattern paper so that I could capture that and keep it secure. So I'm just utilizing opposite sides of these cut aparts. One on the outside is going to have more of an image. This has a beautiful border, so I definitely wanted to incorporate that, and it has that Art Deco feel of this collection. And then on the inside, I utilized one of the cut aparts that had lines. So if you wanted to include journaling, that would be a good place so that you could keep it nice and tidy, or you could cover that up with an additional picture just to have some more room on the inside to finish your folio. So let's incorporate this onto the page. And I have these cut to be all the same size because remember our pages are all the same. That makes it really easy to cut all these pieces and have them ready to assemble. So my cardstock for this is 6 7/8 inches high by 3 7/8 inches wide. The pattern paper is 6 3/4 high by 3 3/4 wide. So we're going to get the border of the book and then as well as that colorful cardstock. And because I have my tip-in, I need to incorporate that now before I add it to the book. So I'm just going to capture that tail along the back side. And then I did add already a little bit of my double-sided tape so that we can work along quickly. And I do have just a little bit of Tombow to finish off that seam so that it will be well secured. So remember we have our first set of flip pages, and this is going to go on the left, and that way my page will open outward to the left, and then my flip will also open outward to the left. So let's go ahead and add this. We do have that border, so I think it is easier to see from the longest side to get it positioned nice and square. So here is my left-hand page with my flip, a couple of lines there for journaling, and then I'm going to repeat that process for this side as well. I already have my image and then something with lines, and I am using the same pattern because these will show together. So let's capture that tail, and then I'll pull this so that I can keep it as flat as possible. That will help me to keep things lined up well. While I have this flattened out, it's a good time to add the pattern paper to the spine. I'm adding it to the one on the left just because it's a little bit wider and it gives it a nicer finished look while it's closed up. I decided to forego that cardstock border for this, and I'm just going for this stripe. It's 6 7/8 inch high by 5/8 of an inch wide, so I'll still get my border of the white showing around, and this will give it a nice finished look as well as add another layer of sturdiness. So let's go ahead and continue working along. When I have my pages opened, now I want all of these to match, so I'm going to incorporate the same pattern all the way across. And since this collection has a nice variety of colorful prints as well as some more that are a little bit brighter and more neutral, I think I'm going to pick the lighter shade for the inside going all the way across. This has a really fun vintagey sewing pattern, so I think it just adds a lot of extra detail. This is a fairly small pattern, so you could easily cover portions of it and still get what that pattern is about. And I'm just going to continue to use that same black cardstock as I work along. That is for a nice consistent look. I did also consider incorporating a blue border. Some of the patterns had some blue, and I just thought this black would look kind of more classic. So let's just add this last section, and this will be 2 full-size flips that open along with 2 tip-ins as well. So let's continue to flip along. Now I've got a totally different combination for this side. So I've got another tip-in prepared with an additional pattern. That is a beautiful peacock, very deco pattern. And I'm just repeating that same process, wrapping that flap around the back to secure it. And this is going to be the front of this set of full page flips. So let's put that here. And then we'll continue on finishing the inside. So I'm just going to reverse the kind of pattern that's on the other side. It was orange with white. This one is a white with orange. It's not really white, it's more of a vintagey kind of beige color, but it has the same pattern just swapped out. So that will look nicely coordinated. And here's that last piece for this side as well. This is really starting to bulk up. That makes me very happy. So in our previous video, I did have a pocket here, and I decided it would probably be more fun to change another one of these details. So I'm going to include a band page, belly band type page. And so I have prepared my pattern paper with the border, and then I cut a strip of an additional layering pattern. This is 2.5 inches high, and I just put it at 6 inches wide so that I would have enough to wrap around. So what I want to do is line that up with my scoreboard where it will fall along one of the grooves along that cardstock, and then I'll just make my score line there, and then I'll very carefully shift that all together at one time over to the score on the left hand side. That way it will be exactly the right amount of width to wrap around but not buckle this page. So I already put some double-sided tape here. I'll just pull up one side. I do want to try and get it fairly even going across, so I'll just press one side into place there, and then I'll pull the other side off, hold it down, and wrap that flap around the back. So now you can see that we have a nice band, and I do want to add a little bit of additional adhesive here on the side of my flap so that it will be well adhered. And then I also want to remove the additional double-sided adhesive. I'll pull this down and make sure that I have these feathers going in the same orientation. And that will capture the sides of my belly band so that it will be secure. Now, if you have something that you want to tuck into here, you can incorporate that in your book without having to adhere it down. This also had a smaller cut apart image that I thought was really pretty. So I do want to add that just to decorate the front of that band. And I'm going to just drop in a little glue, keeping it away from the edges so that I don't accidentally seal that up. And I'll tip that over and adhere it to the middle. I think that is very sweet and a nice addition to what would just be a striped belly band. So that's the inside of our book. I do want to finish the back with the coordinating pattern paper, and so I've just gone ahead and prepared that same size with the same matting to finish off the back. And now is when you want to incorporate your ribbon trim if you're going to use that as a closure. So just have this beautiful, delicate stitched satin. This comes from a really reasonable ribbon. And I've pulled off a length that will give me a generously sized bow. I do need to tack that into place, positioned right where I want it. And then I can capture that in between the base and the pattern paper layers. So here is the front cover with that beautiful peacock feather pattern. So now I want to incorporate a layering pattern. I'm going to switch from that darker all over pattern to something that's a little lighter and geometric, and I'll just cut that to utilize the same borders as I have going around. I'm going to utilize another one of those cut apart images for my focal image, and I don't really have room on this cover for a doily, so I'm going to skip that. It is more important to me to keep the beautiful border of that green showing around that than cutting it down to make it small enough for a doily. So that is the design choice I made for that. And I did put that up on a spacer, so we're getting a little bit of dimension there, and that helps to build up those details. So I'm going to finish this off with some handmade flowers. I did pick the blues from that pattern paper so that it would coordinate perfectly. I paired it with some die cut leaves, some netting, and loopy twine bows. Here's another change that I don't typically make. I would normally use the same ribbon trim throughout, but I decided to change up the accent ribbon for my flower arrangement because this would have just been too much of a flat detail. It would not have been as noticeable. So I decided to use a chevron striped twill. This is also from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and it's in a beautiful turquoise color. So that is going to definitely brighten up that corner and show better as a layering pattern. And then I did finish the center of the larger flower with some double head stamens, and so I'm going to kind of wrap this around this corner. I don't want to cover up too much of that beautiful image, and so I think this will help to anchor the bottom corner. I definitely want to use hot glue for this because it's pretty heavy. Okay, so as I do, I like to finish the opposite corner for balance, and I picked a couple of beautiful little moon charms. I think they're pretty and goes really well with my deco theme. So I just want to position these where I want them to fall, and then I'll capture that string in some hot glue, remove the excess, and then finish the top with a vintage button to hide those cut strings. Of course, I need to add some sequins, and I'm picking a more vintagey color, not a stark white, because I think that coordinates a little bit better with the vintage appeal of this collection. So I'll put 3 up in this corner, and I'll add those as I do with some Tombow. And that's going to be it to finish off our revisit and remake folio using the Couture collection from Graphic 45. If you enjoyed this revisit style of tutorial, make sure you let me know down in the comments and give me a big thumbs up for this video. It really does help my channel to be noticed by more viewers. So here's that last one. Now remember, you can find links in the description for the products I mentioned today, as well as for our social media sites. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.